So Billy, there's another really important part of your life, which probably most people wouldn't expect, and that is art. I know that you're a huge art fan, and it's been a huge influence on your life. Could you tell us a little bit how that started? What art?
Yeah,
what
I mean,
it's doing to your life today?
art has always, what it does to my life is enriches my life. It calms me down. It centers me. Art is very subjective, and the stuff that I surround myself with would probably give other people nightmares, but it calms me. It puts a smile on my face. I like ironic art. Not everyone is into art like I am. Obviously, pure art people are, and I think what we share in common is that it is a real emotion. It's not just, oh, what a pretty picture. I will sit on this couch with no music, no TV, and I will look at paintings and feel them and enjoy them. And yeah, art is very significant for me. I think that music is art. I think that acting is art. It's all creative. But fine art per se, hanging on the wall, has always interested me. I was lucky when punk happened. One of the guys, I came from Bromley in South London, which if you read any of the punk history books, the Bromley contingent was Billy Idol, Susie Sue, Sid Vicious, all the faces came from the same town. And I was a few years younger, so I was like this 12, 13-year-old kid running around looking at the 17, 18-year-olds that were in bands. And it was a great perspective to have, because most stories around the punk rock time are from people that were 5, 6 years older than me. So I have this rose-tinted glasses version, because when you're 12 and you're hanging out with 16, 17-year-olds that have got mohawks and pink spiky hair and going like this everywhere, it's mind-boggling. And that's what I was sucking in, and that was what was formative for me when I was a young kid. And one of these guys had the foresight to teach me that if I was going to listen to The Clash, I also had to listen to the New York Dolls, the Velvet Underground. And he took me back. And it's just the same today, you know, you can't listen to Maroon 5 without understanding where Maroon 5 came from. And I think that I was very lucky to have this. And so this guy taught me about the Velvet Underground. I mean, Lou Reed and Andy Warhol and the Velvets punk wouldn't have happened without the Velvets. It wouldn't have happened without a lot of things, but the Velvets were very seminal and very important. A sidebar here is that I used to use heroin with Nico from the Velvet Underground in Brixton. She towards the end of her life, she moved there, and just like all of us, she was troubled and still very beautiful. And she used to come to gigs that my band was playing, and like all addicts, you don't even have to say one word. There's a connection, and she was like, "Oh yeah, this kid uses smack," and I'm like, "Oh yeah, well, I know she uses smack, you know." Boom. So when I was being taught about the history and where punk rock came from by this older kid, he was showing me the Velvets, and he explained to me how Andy Warhol wasn't a musician, but was very integral in the formation of the Velvet Underground and their imagery and the banana. I'm like, oh, wow. And then the factory and all the subversive at the time artwork, and also about repetition, how he would take things, an image, like the soup can, very famous. And Warhol's thought was that the message and the story surrounding an image would change subject to repetition, which is why there's however many soup cans, 28 or 30 or whatever it is. And that's why all his images were editions of 10 and 8 and different colors, because repetition, really important. So I was forced to learn about contemporary fine art when I was a kid. Owning it seemed a long way away. You know, I just
But you've
used.
come a long way.
Well, I've come a seriously long way. I mean, all I had was the Andy Warhol prints book, and I used to flick through it and be like, one day, one day. And you know, from that I learned about Jean-Michel, Basquiat, and I mean, you know, the fact that that is hanging in my house blows my mind. Still blows my mind. That's one piece I'll sit and look at. This is an edition of 20. The story, this is signed by Jean-Michel, and it's called Leg of Dog. And he had a whole Leonardo da Vinci phase where he was obsessed with the anatomy and he would draw stuff. And hanging out with Warhol, he wanted to do what Warhol did, which is editions. You know, and yeah, obviously you've got your $100 million Basquiat 6 foot wide oil paintings. That's not that, but a man has to start somewhere. So the story with this is that it's an edition of 20, but there was only 11 signed. And I tried to do some digging, and I found out that he went in to do all 20, and no one knows why, but after number 11, he left. He said, I can't do this anymore, and left. So there's 11 signed, which I have one of them, and 9 unsigned. But, you know, to have a Basquiat in here after being steeped in all that art knowledge for so many years, and looking at Jean-Michel and Warhol and Lichtenstein and Haring as rock stars in their own right, you know, it's pretty amazing to be sitting surrounded by all this art.
Yes, and you've managed to build an amazing collection, which
Thank
kindly
you.
took me through.
Thank
Maybe
you.
you wanna highlight some pieces?
Without even getting up off this couch, we can see the Banksy over there. That was one I was looking for quite a while. It was a show image. When you do an art show, you pick one piece, and it's on the flyer, and it's on the advert, and on the T-shirt or whatever. And that was the show image for 2006, and I wanted it and couldn't find it. And I was touring a couple of years ago in England and went to Steve Lazaridis' gallery, and lo and behold, there it was, and I bought it. You know, that's how I buy art. I need that. I have to have that. And for me, Banksy is unrivaled. It's not about how well you can cut the stencil or where you spray it. It's about the message. And there's no artist currently that has such a poignant and tongue-in-cheek message and yet is so hitting at home than Banksy. You know, I mean, I remember seeing in Trafalgar Square in London, there are statues, massive, grandiose, probably super expensive statues. And one of them is of Queen Boadicea in her chariot. And one morning, London woke up and there was a wheel clamp, a boot, on Boadicea's chariot, which is 50 foot in the air. Now, how that guy did it, it stayed there for 3 days before they could figure out how to get it down. And I mean, that is genius, genius message, funny, tongue-in-cheek, doesn't hurt anyone. And you know, the other famous stuff that Banksy does is he goes into museums and hangs pieces of his own that stay there for a week because no one, I mean, it shows how stupid we all are. Everyone's walking past this in the Louvre. It's like a Banksy hanging in the Louvre and everyone's like, oh yeah, it's fantastic, wonderful. It's so great how he does his art. And I have 5 or 6 Banksys in here.
Wow. What else do you have?
My bank manager hates me. Well, the Haring, the Keith Haring. That was an unexpected purchase, but one that had to be made. I got an email from a friend of mine, Dave Navarro, who is also an avid modern art collector, and he said, there's 11 chalk drawings, and they're up for sale from the New York subway. You know, Keith used to go down and just draw over those big adverts. And this guy ripped down 11 of them and held on to them, and then he sold them to a gallery, and the gallery emailed Dave, and Dave went, oh, well, yeah. And then he sent the email to me, and obviously my reaction was, yeah. So I have an original, I think it's 1982, Keith Haring's subway drawing, chalk. If you read the books, it's the chalky drawings that they call it. And I was lucky because I got to pick out of the 10 remaining ones. That Navarro had one of them, and I managed to get one with aliens, because he's famous for the aliens, and the barking dog, and the squiggly man. So I got all of Keith Haring in one chalk drawing, which is great. There's all kinds of stuff here. Damien Hirst, there's a dot piece in here, and a lot of Warhol.
Yes, I would imagine.
I mean, you know, Warhol's my guy. Lots of people discuss, is he overrated? Did he really have such an impact? Well, the truth of the matter is, when you get to own them, they have a special feeling. And that to me, validate. I don't really want to sit and discuss whether his edition of a soup can was art. Is this art or isn't it art? Well, the fact of the matter is it is. It's framed and it's hanging on my wall, so it's art.
But it's not just any Warhol you own. It's a set of a particular.
I have a few nice ones. We'll go and have a look at the electric chairs. It's not the set yet. There's a few missing, but there's 4 Warhol electric chairs that surround my bed. Like I said to you, most people go for, you know, a nice landscape of a sun setting over the Monterey Bay, and I've got 4 electric chairs surrounding my bed. But that's more of a statement on who I am than, you know, art in general.
It's also on how you see art, because you understand it for what it is, right? What he tried to do is that very...
I agree with you. I agree with you. His Death and Disaster series, which I am obsessed with, he was dulling down the image itself to give us a different feeling to what... If you look at an electric chair, it's very scary, it's very chilling, but he printed them in beautiful colours, repetition, and it really does. When you look at my bedroom, there's 4 beautifully coloured paintings there, editions, and you have to look, and then you're like, is that an electric chair? Well, yes, it is. But what a beautiful display of art that makes. And so Warhol was correct that he took an image of death and destruction and turned it into something beautiful. It's very clever.
Which is genius.
Very, very clever.
But there's also, looking over there, for example, contemporary artists who are not only artists, but also good friends of yours. I was out with Shepard last night. He was at that show last night, and Shepard. I've got quite a few Shepard Fairey in here, obviously because he's a friend, and I love what he does. He's probably the closest to Banksy I can think of that has fantastic messages and a brilliant execution, and. Yeah, that particular piece is very special. There's only one of them. He did that for me. But Shepard has been such a rock and supportive. I mean, he's probably one of the world's greatest contemporary living artists. And he showed up for me at my first art show and DJ'd it. He has come here and critiqued my personal art that I make. And critique in a way, you know, not that shit. Really thoughtful comments and saying, this is great, your brush strokes here are great, well, you may want to look at this, da da da. His support and encouragement of my fine art career was unexpected from someone of such great stature and respect and amazing artwork. He's a good guy, man. Shepard's a great guy. Plus, he came over and looked at one of my Banksys that's signed and was like, yeah, that's real. That's wow. You know, that's nice. Absolutely. So with that, we're on to the next important subject, and that is your amazing art.
Well, why don't I take you to the studio and we can have a chat about that?
Let's do that.